So would you join me this morning in giving a very, very warm portical welcome to the Honorable Jason Kenney. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor, for your invitation to join you here in this very lively and spirit-filled church. I just got off the plane last night from Islamabad, Pakistan, and 36 hours ago I was sitting next to the coffin of my friend, the martyr, Shehbaz Bhatti. In Pakistan, about 1.5% of the population of 180 million people are Christians. There are other religious minorities, Sikhs and Hindus, Baha'i, Ahmadiyas, and others. All of them live under fear that someday someone may accuse them of having blasphemed the Prophet Muhammad, which will bring upon them a potential death sentence. This is a law that is used and abused to keep Christians and others to allow them to be marginalized. If they get a promotion, if someone wants their land, if someone is envious of them, too often they will bring a false charge of blasphemy against the Prophet Muhammad. 3 months ago, that happened to a poor Christian peasant woman named Asiya Bibi in a rural village in the Punjabi part of Pakistan. Asiya Bibi, like almost in a biblical story from the New Testament, went to the local well in her village just simply to draw some water. And some of the Muslim women didn't like the fact that this unclean infidel was taking water from the well. And so one of them accused her of having blasphemed the Prophet Muhammad. Asiya Bibi was arrested, taken by a mob to the local police station. She was quickly thereafter taken before a court and convicted on the evidence of one person that she had committed blasphemy. The sentence of death was announced as her punishment. My dear friend Shehbaz Bhatti, the first and only Christian in the government of Pakistan, immediately spoke out against this persecution, against this terrible violation of the basic rights of a powerless Christian peasant woman. He called his friend, the governor of the Punjab state of Pakistan, to go and visit Asiya Bibi in jail. Governor Salman Taseer did that courageously. He and my friend Shehbaz Bhatti had for long years advocated an end to the abusive blasphemy laws in Pakistan, as have many other brave and courageous political leaders, risking their lives. Because Governor Taseer went and visited this powerless Christian woman, Asiya Bibi, in jail, he was targeted. A fatwa was imposed on him, and on January the 4th, he was gunned down by his own bodyguards. And they said that my friend Shehbaz Bhatti was next on the list, because simply to call for an end to the blasphemy law, they said, was itself an act of blasphemy. Shehbaz reached out to the world community. He went to Rome and visited with the Pope. He went to Brussels and visited with European foreign leaders. He came to Washington and participated in the National Prayer Breakfast. He met there with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and congressional leaders. And then he had called me. I've known Shehbaz for 2 or 3 years. He was a close friend. When I first met him, I had the sense of someone who was truly special, someone who truly had a special calling and a unique character, a character of meekness, gentleness, humbleness. In fact, just yesterday, when I was in Pakistan, I was meeting with people who have known him for years, and they said that they had never, ever heard Shehbaz say an ill word of anyone else. Now, folks, I can tell you, like Shehbaz, I'm in politics. You can't say that about many politicians. This is a man who had a sense of the supernatural nature of his vocation. And so after his friend Salman Taseer was assassinated, he called me and said, Jason, I have to go around the world and raise the plight of the Christians and other minorities in Pakistan. I now want to take up your invitation to come to Canada. I said, come, Shehbaz, we'll do everything we can for you. We brought him in and introduced him to the Prime Minister. He had a meeting with the Prime Minister. He gave testimony before a parliamentary committee. We had a special reception where he met parliamentary and community leaders, and we spent a great deal of time with him. When I last saw Shehbaz, just following his meeting with our Prime Minister, he said to me, Jason, when they kill me, not if, when they kill me, do not give up the fight. Do whatever you can for the poor persecuted people of Pakistan. The day he was killed, he sent me the following email. He had just been reappointed to the cabinet. And he said, my induction into the cabinet has sent a wave of joy and encouragement among the religious minorities across the country, especially the Christian community. I personally believe that it is Jesus Christ who has once again bestowed unto me this responsibility and position with a special purpose and mission to serve the suffering humanity. And I am determined to carry on defending the principles of religious freedom, human equality, and the rights of minorities. On Wednesday morning, as he was leaving his mother's house, gunmen jumped out of a car and strafed his vehicle with 2 AK-47s, 27 bullet wounds in his body. According to those who first came to him in the car, he had sat there without ducking, without running. He knew the end had come. He sat there peacefully. He had just been reappointed to the cabinet. And he said, my induction into the cabinet has sent a wave of joy and encouragement among the religious minorities across the country, especially the Christian community. I personally believe that it is Jesus Christ who has once again bestowed unto me this responsibility and position with a special purpose and mission to serve the suffering humanity. And I am determined to carry on defending the principles of religious freedom, human equality, and the rights of minorities. On Wednesday morning, as he was leaving his mother's house, gunmen jumped out of a car and strafed his vehicle with 2 AK-47s, 27 bullet wounds in his body. According to those who first came to him in the car, he had sat there without ducking, without running. He knew the end had come. He sat there peacefully, waiting for his martyrdom. Just a few weeks ago, he met Shehbaz was a Christian of the Catholic confession, and a few weeks ago he met with the leader of his church, my church, Pope Benedict XVI, who wrote just last year the following words about martyrdom. Benedict XVI said, where does the strength to face martyrdom come from? From deep and intimate union with Christ, because martyrdom and the vocation to martyrdom are not the result of human effort, but the response to a call of God. They are a gift of His grace that enables a person out of love to give his life for Christ and for the church, and hence for the world. If we read the lives of the martyrs, we are amazed at their calmness and courage in confronting suffering and death. God's power is fully expressed in weakness, in the poverty of those who entrust themselves to Him and place their hope in Him alone, as it says in Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. Yet it is important to stress that God's grace does not suppress or suffocate the freedom of those who face martyrdom. On the contrary, it enriches and it exalts them. The martyr is an exceedingly free person. As regards the world, a free person who in a single, definitive act gives God his whole life, and in a supreme act of faith, hope, and charity, abandons himself into the hands of his Creator and Redeemer. He gives up his life in order to be associated totally with the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. In a word, martyrdom is a great act of love in response to God's immense love. No words could better describe the courage, and as Benedict has said, the sense of peacefulness, calmness with which Shehbaz embraced that vocation. I pleaded with him when he was in Ottawa just recently not to go back. We knew what would happen. He said, "Jason, if I don't go back, how can I defend those who cannot leave? How can I defend the vulnerable Christians and other minorities who cannot escape the persecution that they are facing?" He went back because he loved those people. And so I just encourage all of us to be inspired by the example of our brother Shehbaz Bhatti. I would normally say to pray for the repose of his soul, but I don't think we need to do that. I think we know where he is, in a better place. But I ask for you to pray for those who need God's protection in Pakistan and elsewhere. I ask for you to pray for the Christians of Egypt. Just this week, a priest was assassinated. 2 months ago, 23 Christians blown up in one of their churches. I ask you to pray for the Christians of Iraq who have been terrorized, whose daughters have been violated, whose leaders have been beheaded, whose churches have been destroyed. I ask you to pray for the Christians around the world and other people of faith who are targeted simply because of their belief in God. I ask you to pray for Asiya Bibi, the Christian peasant who is still alive in a jail cell today, who has not been executed only thanks to the intervention and witness of Shehbaz Bhatti and Salman Taseer, both of whom lost their lives. And finally, I ask you, as Canadians, from whatever parts of the world you come from, to realize that the freedom of religion that you give worship, that you celebrate today here in your church, that you not take that for granted. That you realize that this is a freedom that is denied hundreds of millions of people around the world. And by simply walking into a church, they told me not to go to the funeral because it was being targeted for an attack. Imagine living in a country where simply to cross the threshold into your church could be the last thing that you do. To enter into the place of worship and praise with fear and trembling. I'll tell you what it does for those people. It makes their belief strong, like a rock. And for those of us in Canada who enjoy this right to praise our God and to worship freely, we must not take that for granted. We must defend it for ourselves. We must realize what a great blessing it is. And we must do what we can, spiritually and otherwise, to defend it for others so that Shehbaz's death will not be in vain. Thank you, and God bless his sacred memory.